Continuing now on Newsmax Prime, you know the way presidential politics used to work? The campaigns would really start in earnest on Labor Day. Of course, that was then and this is now. Here we are in the dog days of August, and the ads have assumed a snarling tone. Miranda Kahn has more.
JD, today Hillary Clinton's campaign went after Donald Trump in a new ad that some say goes too far.
The reason a lot of Klan members like Donald Trump is because a lot of what he believes, we believe in.
It's the oldest play in the Democratic playbook.
Today, Hillary Clinton's campaign released this new ad taking aim at Donald Trump and his supporters.
I am a farmer and white nationalist. Support Donald Trump.
They are left with only this one tired argument. You're racist.
This isn't the first time Clinton has suggested Trump is a racist.
He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. I don't know where the bounds are. I don't know where the bottom is.
But pastor and televangelist Mark Burns, who's defended Trump in the past,
I know what real racism is, and it's not Donald Trump.
Suggests that it's Clinton's campaign that's dropped to a new low. He sent out this statement calling the video repulsive and revolting and urging Clinton to disavow it. Of course, Hillary Clinton not only didn't disavow the video, she reinforced her message during a speech today in Reno, Nevada.
He is taking hate groups mainstream. This is someone who retweets white supremacists online.
Trump, meanwhile, who has struggled in the polls when it comes to Latinos and African Americans and women, continues his minority outreach.
It's got to be everybody, or we don't have a great country.
And pointing to Democrats as the ones who are to blame for minorities not getting ahead.
Their policies have produced only more poverty, total joblessness, and failing schools.
Trump responded to Clinton's speech on Twitter. He says Hillary Clinton's short speech is pandering to the worst instincts in our society. She should be ashamed of herself. Back to you, JD.
Thanks very much, Miranda. And for more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by our panel. From our Newsmax TV newsroom, conservative strategist Christopher Metzler. From Newsmax Washington, columnist for the Daily Beast, Barrett, Holmes, Pitner. And from Newsmax New York, big data and counterterrorism expert Sultan. Oz, in addition to being conservative, happens to be Muslim, as I understand it. And Oz, we saw briefly this morning's roundtable with Donald Trump. So I want to start with you. Since you were there at Trump Tower for that sit down, what did you hear from Mr. Trump, and did you like what you heard?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was refreshing. It was very candid. It was the first time I've ever heard that kind of rhetoric from a candidate, and it was basically an open ask. It was with the Republican Leadership Initiative, which has focused in Los Angeles and New York City primarily, looking at places like Kings County, Queens, Harlem, the inner city areas that have been hard hit since the recession in 2008. And the big question is, what can be done to fix America? What are the big challenges that we see ahead? And I think what he came out from there was ideas of where to start going in terms of focusing tactically, I think, on a platform. We discussed jobs, we discussed recidivism and the fact that it's very difficult getting folks who've actually been incarcerated back into jobs, even an opportunity to train inmates while they're in prison or provide some other institutional knowledge that might be valuable. And then we talked about education, and education wasn't education in the traditional sense where we were talking Common Core or not Common Core. STEM came to the forefront, as well as potentially looking at new forms of education that would allow people to compete in the workforce of 2020, 2024, and 2028. And the final note, I think, to add to all of this is that he has mentioned that he's going to start rolling out policy proposals or policy programs, and those are going to be coming, I think, prior to the debates. So there's a lot more to come.
So it is substantive, and as you relayed the conversation, it sounded altogether constructive. Would that the same situation existed in our state of race relations? Take a look at the latest numbers from the NBC News Survey Monkey poll. 65% of Americans think race relations are getting worse. Let me turn to Barrett, Holmes, Pitner now. Barrett, why do you think that is?
I think most Americans think racial relations are getting worse because African Americans have voiced their frustrations louder than we've done in many, many years. And so now people actually have to confront these issues that many Americans didn't think actually existed. And so now that these issues exist, people can perceive it as though we're not progressing or that things have gotten worse. But what African Americans are really talking about are systemic problems that have plagued our communities and America as a whole for many, many years. And now we're actively talking about it. And that creates, an organic confrontation. But that doesn't mean that the conversation is a sign of regression. It's actually quite progressive and beneficial that we can out in the open talk about structural impediments and structural problems that have harmed the African American community and still exist today.
And in your mind, no wedge issue voiced by President Obama?
No, I definitely wouldn't say that it's a wedge issue voiced by President Obama. I'd say Obama, being the president, has emboldened a lot of African Americans and given them the confidence that there's somebody in the White House that understands their issues and they can speak up and they know that somebody will get where they're coming from. This is really one of the first times that this has happened for Black Americans, and I think that's encouraged us to say our grievances and and
well,
be confident about what
let me turn to Chris Metzler on this, because it used to be that the president set the tone, and the tone, at least from my perspective, has not been altogether constructive. What's your take on it, Chris?
I agree 100%. Look, this notion, if you look at kind of so-called race relations and what has happened under President Obama, I don't think that you have seen a whole lot of progress from an economic standpoint. I don't think that you've seen a whole lot of progress for African Americans, period. I get the notion that some folks can think, okay, there's someone that actually understands what we're talking about. Yeah, I get that, but what did we see? We've seen a bear summit and not much else.
Donald Trump was on the stump today in New Hampshire, making the appeal to minority voters once more, asking them to take a chance on his candidacy. Let's watch and listen.
Folks, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Donald Trump will fix it. We're going to make it better. We're going to help education. We're going to straighten out crime. We're going to create jobs. We're going to bring our companies back. What the hell do you have to lose? It can't get any worse than what it is right now.
Sultan, your response to that message that Mr. Trump has been voicing with great regularity recently?
I think it's an interesting message, but look at I come from Harlem, and we have 20% effective unemployment. We have gigantic problems with recidivism. We have huge issues in terms of bringing jobs that matter. One of the things that we discussed in the roundtable was the concept of NAFTA dads, and these are men who are basically now 25 to 55 years old who were disenfranchised by the NAFTA Accord. And they haven't been able to necessarily find the same level of employment that they had previously in manufacturing and industrial sectors, or even commercial sectors. So you have a lot of ire, and you have right now effectively 8 years of Democratic rule where, recession aside, I don't think lives of a lot of Americans are better. Half of America earns $50,000 or less per annum, and costs are rising. Housing costs have gone through the roof. In Harlem, prices have increased 100% in 9 years. These are huge issues, and so he may not be presenting the best message with what do you have to lose, but I do have to say that Hillary's proposal for the same district that I'm in is Section 8 housing. How exactly do you promote job growth when you're promoting housing that people can't necessarily even get into if they earn more than the cap?
And to that point, let me go to something, and Barrett, this just may be my way of looking at things, but as I'm hearing Donald Trump in a kind of rough-hewn way, I'm flashing back to Jesse Jackson, of all people, who said back in the late 80s, the color of prosperity is not white, it is not black, it is green in terms of money and economic opportunity. Final 30 seconds for you to give your thoughts here, sir.
Well, yeah, economic opportunity is something that can benefit all people, but African Americans have had a large impediment in front of them, and there's stats coming out, recently that showed that it'll be about 200 years for like the wealth accumulation for African Americans to equal that of whites. So Obama's not going to turn that around in just 8 years. I think Donald Trump's message of what do you have to lose, like African Americans, our life in America has actually gotten a lot better than it had in like the 70s or 60s. So there's a lot that we could lose, as in we need to keep on progressing, but I think his message is overall not on point, and it won't resonate with too many African Americans.
Final 15 seconds to you, Chris. Go ahead.
I absolutely think that his message is on point. Let's not confuse the way that he's talking about this with the substance, because from the standpoint of African American lives getting better under President Obama, under a Democratic administration, we have not seen
To be
that.
continued. Gentlemen, you have our thanks.